Chatty Patty Walla Walla Talk Show.
We will talk about the things that mean so much to you, like going to a restaurant or hanging at the zoo. Clothes and sports and funny news, crafts and travel too. Nothing ever scripted, so expect the unexpected.
Hello,
But it's here.
hello.
But no how.
It's the Chatty Patty Walla Walla Talk Show. It's the Chatty Patty Walla Walla Talk Show. It's the Chatty Patty Walla Walla Talk Show.
Hi, welcome to our show. It's Monday, November 26th, episode 73.
OMJ.
I'm Patty. I'm Chatty Patty.
I'm Paula Walla.
And Paula Walla.
And we're all wearing red.
Even our special guest today, Supermouth Dave Drason, otherwise known as Dave Brzezinski. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for the invite. I like what you've done with the dominatrix dungeon here.
I know.
All right, well, thank you.
And if I could say one thing, that opening tune kicks royal behind.
Thank you.
Oh, it should be. Some
funny.
TV show should pick that up. I don't care what it is, but it's like one of the greatest tunes of any TV show, bar none.
Well, tell us who did that, Paula. You're singing, obviously, and playing guitar.
I wrote it really quickly because we were filming that day and we didn't have a theme song or a name.
We didn't have a name for our show.
So I wrote the song and I said, Patty, this is the name of our show because I wrote a song called this.
That's so funny.
And I did it with Jason Gittinger on drums and some other guys at the School of Rock and Pop, literally on the fly.
So
It was
there's
cool. It's
there's
a
a
cool
lot
song.
of reasons you might know Dave, and he's well known especially for big time wrestling in the 60s and the 70s. You started out as a fan and a photographer.
Well, even before that, back in the very late 1950s, 1959 really is when my first memory of wrestling is. And at that time, it was Motor City Wrestling, which was very big around Detroit here. And we lived on the east side of Detroit. My parents owned a 2-story home, and a family moved upstairs, and it was the most popular wrestler in Detroit at the time, Leaping Larry Shane.
Oh my God, he
So,
lived above you? Was
yeah.
he super noisy and jumping around
Oh
all the time?
no! He was really nice. But it's like now I've got this sports figure living upstairs from me, and now I can watch him on TV, and I'm only a 6-year-old kid, right about that age, and it's like he was my idol. He was my Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth at the time, and of all things, just watching him on TV. And there came a time, and I'll never forget, 1961, he asked my mother if he could take me to the TV tapings that day.
Ooh.
What they used to do at that time is film Motor City Wrestling on Channel 7 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they'd have the show at Olympia or Cobo Arena that night.
Oh, kind of to promote it?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, cool.
So he took me, to the TV studio, and I'm just like this little kid, and so the ironic thing is we're walking into the studio, and we're walking down the hallway, and he's got his bag and stuff like that, and out of one of the rooms comes this monster of a guy named Ricky the Crusher Cortez. And at the time, he was Leaping Larry Shane's biggest nemesis. They had the biggest feud going.
Game on.
Well, I don't know.
So-
Leaping Larry sounds kind of fruity.
So anyway, here comes Ricky Cortez, and I see him, and I know about, seeing him on TV and their feud and stuff, and I see him, and I'm, this little kid, and these guys are giants at that age, and I saw him, and I got scared as hell. I thought they were going to fight right in that hallway,
Well,
But
I
then
saw pictures of you. You were a tiny, skinny little guy.
Well, I still am, man. The TV makes me look at, puts
It
on a few
does add
pounds.
like 50 pounds, right? I can
50, I
attest
know.
to that.
But anyway, the ironic thing is, he went back and, everything was fine. But the ironic thing about that whole experience is many years later, I ended up managing Ricky the Crusher Cortez.
Awesome. Did you help progress his career, or what was your...
Well, I wouldn't
did he
say that.
What was it like managing? I mean, times were definitely different back then.
Well, when I did it, first I started out, I was a fan, and I always went to Cobo Arena, and there's, how that all started. And I would always take my camera, and then I got, progressively a little bit better with, photographing, and I started, submitting some of my photographs to wrestling magazines, and they would, buy my photographs. And then, I learned that if you did a story behind the photographs, you made more money. So in 1968, 1969, I'd be getting a check every month for like $25, $50, which that was a lot of money back then.
Right.
And
you had a job.
In a way, but then I, ended up becoming, the photographer at Cobo Arena for Big Time Wrestling, and I wrote the Body Press program, a lot of that. And then, I wanted, to be, somehow involved in wrestling.
Without actually wrestling.
Exactly, because I wasn't big enough.
It's
I only,
scary.
at that time, I only weighed 142 pounds. I mean, if I wore a white hat and white boots, I can go as a Halloween thing as a Q-tip. I was just so skinny. But I had, good friends who were managers at that time. Probably one of the most famous is Abdullah Farouk, who was managing the Sheik at that time, Bobby Heenan, and George Cannon. And they knew, I, talked to them and I want to be a manager. I want to be a manager. But managers back then were older, retired wrestlers who couldn't wrestle anymore, but they can go on TV and talk for other wrestlers
Promoters.
who couldn't put themselves over. So it's like, it was, a crapshoot. Me as a young 17, 18-year-old kid, getting into this. But the Sheik, who was the promoter at Big Time Wrestling, which a lot of people didn't know that, he knew this too. And I had this passion. This is what I wanted to do. And during the time when I was his photographer, when we would tape promos, for other cities, you do, Dayton, Toledo, whatever cities, we do them all in one big sitting. And at the end of that, he would put me in front of a TV camera with another wrestler and say, okay, you're going to be in Cincinnati going against this person, 2 minutes, go.
Wow.
And I had to, talk like a manager would to put my guy over and, what we're going to do and things like that.
Well, give us an idea of how it felt, what the vibe was like at Cobo Hall back in the 60s, and the wrestling fans, what were they like then?
Oh, like nowadays, fans know sort of how it works. Back then, it was a very closed, society in wrestling. People didn't know that we knew who was going to win, who wasn't going to win, how we were going to win.
You knew who was going to win?
Back then.
You just blew it
but,
for me.
at that time, people believed. There was so many different characters.
We don't believe
back
anything
then.
today.
Yeah.
No one can believe anything anymore.
But there was so many characters back then in wrestling. The evil German, the Jap, the Sheik, from Syria, so the bad guys.
Is the Sheik and the Iron Sheik the same thing?
You are striking a nerve with that one.
Oh, Paula, you're going to get he's going to take you down.
The Sheik is the original.
Okay.
The Iron Sheik, the drug-infested jabroni who is a...
Jabroni?
Oh, he's like a piranha, a pariah of, he's a disgrace to professional wrestling as far as I'm concerned. So
then
I don't know him or anything.
I'll let you apologize.
I don't know him.
Then he's no friend of our show.
He's no friend of mine, but, it'll get around.
Because I think I met him at St. Andrews Hall once. Me and Mary.
Or was it Montgomery Ward's?
No, they were wrestling at Joe Louis. Me and Mary from the Cobras went, and then he was at St. Andrews, and I remember I go, make a muscle, and he made muscles, and me and Mary hung on his arms.
Oh. But
anyway,
to get
he was
back,
bad.
We don't like
cut the
him.
Iron
We don't
Sheik
like him.
crap out on me.
Yeah.
But it's an amazing feeling, back then, of how it was. More than anything,
So without
we're
the
the bad
cameras,
guy.
there's no cameras,
Video.
Well, no, wait, it was on television.
Yeah.
It was televised.
But, but on television, that's how you get people to come and see it or
Right.
put
The
asses
goal
in the
is to get
seats.
'em, yeah.
I would have to come up with the most bizarre things that I wanted these people to believe. to get them to come. And I didn't care if they hated me or not. That's, we're the bad guy.
What about the folding chair? Who started the hitting with the folding chairs?
God, that's been going on since the teens, 20s, 30s.
Is that real?
That's from the Cowboys.
It doesn't feel good getting hit by a chair.
So it's not like a foam fake chair?
Oh, no.
They really hit people.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
well,
my God.
Let me tell you, as a as a 142-pound manager, a lot of times the people in the audience, you get them all riled up, and, they just lose their emotions. And a lot of times they're not going to do something to a 250, 300-pound wrestler. But as a manager, me, 142 pound, and I'm outside the ring, so I'm an easy target. And I tell you, over the years, I've been spit at, kicked, punched, batteries thrown at, coins, piss thrown at, beers.
Batteries? Why batteries?
Anything that they could throw.
Just because they happen to have a battery?
I've been stabbed,
Oh, my God.
And it's like all part of that game.
Was anybody making any money back then?
Yeah.
Was it you?
It wasn't me. The Sheik, was probably the number one attraction in the world at that time.
Ooh.
And, he was a multimillionaire. He was the biggest attraction, made the most money, and, and those kind of guys do. But then there's, the guys on the bottom, who are the opening matches and stuff who make... Who knows, $15-$25 a night to get your ass beat.
Ouch.
And, go home and just feel
I
like
forgot
hell
to say,
for days.
we don't swear. We're not supposed to swear.
We're not supposed to swear
Oh,
on
I'm
the
not
show.
supposed to say hell? I'm sorry.
Okay. Have you ever seen the movie The Wrestler? What did you think of
Yeah,
that?
it was very good.
I liked that movie.
A good friend of mine, Evan Ginsberg, he was the executive producer in that. And, when I watched it, it reminded me of a lot of the guys that I managed. Some of the guys that I managed were at the end of their careers and, doing anything to make a buck. And, they should have retired, but, this wrestling thing is in their blood. It's like what they want to, do. They want to entertain. They want to go out and be in front of a crowd.
Right, but the physical toll, ugh.
Yeah. There would be times.
Enough with the chair.
I know guys.
Yeah, what are some injuries, some bad injuries?
Oh, I've seen it all. Guys who, at that time, these guys didn't have health care. They didn't have insurance. They didn't have a union, anything. So if, they broke a finger, twisted an ankle or anything, you just suck it up because you got a match the next night in another town. And that's the only way you made your money. So it's it's not fun. And I'll tell you, for me, I was very athletic at a young age. And Bobby Heenan, taught me, a lot about managing and things, what to do, when to do it. And being, athletic, a lot of times I would get involved late in the match to where the other good guy, would get a hold of me and toss me around and throw me in the corner, and I'd, take body slams and bumps, go over the top rope and stuff. And it was easy for me, but still, it takes a toll. And after doing this night after night after night after night for, months at a time, in truth, it hurt, but then you'd get up and you'd do it again the next day. But I'd come home at like 2, 3 in the morning or be at a hotel, for the next day. And literally it would take me a half hour, 45 minutes to get out of bed just to go to the bathroom.
Did you enjoy the crowd yelling, get
no,
him,
man,
get him? And then
loved it,
you,
really.
you're the one that's getting
I
beat
always
up.
say, the best thing about, being involved in professional wrestling is the roar of the popcorn and the smell of the crowd.
Okay.
Would managers ever go at it? Like if someone else was managing a different fight, wrestler and you, and then get in an argument and...
I've never, because,
Get 'em!
I was like one of the very youngest people to ever manage in, the history of professional
What did your
wrestling.
parents think at the time? You're doing what?
Were they fans?
No. My
His mom probably wasn't.
My mother and my aunt, they would always watch me on, because I was doing my stuff up in Canada, Superstars of Wrestling with George Cannon, and they would be able to pick up the station out of Toronto, on UHF or whatever it was at the time. And every Saturday, my aunt and my mother be in front of the TV, and, they'd be yelling, oh, you
That's my baby.
And then I'd come home, and they, you have to turn it up, to entertain. You become this other persona, and then you have to come back down, and it's not easy. And there would be times I'd come home after, a couple months on the road, and, I'd be off for, a few days or something like that, and I'd be with family like at Thanksgiving or something. And
you'd be normal.
I'd try to be normal,
Fight over the turkey.
But the first thing they want, all the, my cousins and my relatives, they want
They
to
wanna
talk
wrestle
wrestling.
you?
No,
Oh,
they want to
wanna
talk
wrestle,
about wrestling and stuff. And it's like the last thing I wanted to do. But when they mention it, then you get back in that character again. And they didn't like that character.
Oh.
They didn't like it on TV, and then they didn't like it in person either. And it's like, it's a hard balance, but that's how you made your money.
Is there like old footage of this? Like, could someone do a documentary, or are some of these wrestlers still around?
Very few of the big-time wrestlers, who worked back in the 60s and 70s are, most of them are dead. Sheik, Bobo Brazil. There are a few around, Pampero Firpo, Fred Curry, he's still around, but not that many. Most of them
Were they all
get on it then.
Were they all smoking cigarettes after the show?
No, most of those guys are beer drinkers.
Okay.
There's just so many stories I could tell you
Except
about.
this guy, he likes wine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at that time I didn't. I didn't drink until my 20s, and I wish I did, because there was times when Andre the Giant, when he came into town, he rode around with me. Because I had a big Ford LTD at the time.
How could you fit? How many wrestlers could you fit in the car?
It depends. We've did road trips where, and I was
Cars
the
were littler.
smallest one. So there'd be, four, one in the front, one in the back, or the driver and another one. I'm like this in the middle. But,
You walk in a restaurant and everybody's like, oh, we better get more food going.
If you want to, here, can I tell a restaurant story?
Yeah.
I'm with Andre the Giant.
Okay, how tall was he?
He was like 7 foot. They say
Oh my
he was
God.
7'3", 400, 500, 600 pounds, something like that. But anyway, he's riding with me, and we do a show at Cobo Arena, that night, or Saturday night, and we had to be in Toronto for a show Sunday night. So he had never been to Toronto before. So he goes, oh, hey, boss. He had a real thick voice. Hey, boss, let's get up early. We go Toronto. Okay, we could do that. But back in the 70s, in Toronto, not a lot was open on Sundays. Their laws were...
Mother's Pizza.
If you were open
No, I'm
on a
just kidding.
Saturday, you had to be closed on a Sunday.
Oh,
So anyway,
Canada.
Yeah, we get up at like 6 in the morning, we go, and we get into downtown Toronto, and we're on Yonge Street. So we're both hungry, and let's go to breakfast. So we find this little place that's open, and there's only counter stools. So we walk in, and it's like this little Oriental couple, a wife who's the waitress and, the husband behind who's cooking. We walk in, and their eyes, like, bugged out so big, they see Andre the Giant. It's like, oh, Godzilla, So anyway, we sit down, and, she comes over, and she says, what you order? So I order my, typical eggs, a scrambled hard, bacon, toast, and, I'm fine. So, she goes, looks at Andre, and it's like, she's looking at him like this, and it's like, okay. And Andre goes, I would like half done egg, I want pound of bacon, and I want half little toast. And she stood there and looked at him, didn't understand a word he said. So it's like, Andre, tell her again. Oh, I want half done egg, I want pound bacon, I want half little toast. So she walks behind. 10 minutes later, here she's bringing our food. And it's like, I can get mine, here's mine. And she sets Andre's plate in front of him. And me and him look at each other, and we just gut bust out laughing so hard. And now
she give him?
this poor woman's like, what did I do? And we look at his plate again, we're just laughing so hard, bending over. So anyway, we look at his plate. There's a half an egg. There is one piece of bacon and a half a slice of toast. And it's like, this ain't going to satisfy this guy. So now I tell the lady, I said,
Times
no,
20.
no. He wants half dozen eggs. 6. She back, what? Yeah, and he wants a pound of bacon. A plate full of bacon. What? And then I says, he wants a half a loaf of toast, And she looked at his plate and looked at him and said, who could eat that? Went back. The husband cooked it. We laughed so hard. It's like, but that, Andre the Giant story. And you mentioned, alcohol. And I'll tell one more quick Andre the Giant story. We're in Dayton, Ohio. And in Dayton, you can buy beer at a bar, and take it with you.
Oh, to go.
So anyway, after our show, Andre and me, we walk into this bar real quickly, and it's like all the patrons in there are like, holy Christ, look at this guy, So we just walk up to the counter, and I didn't drink anything at the time. Andre orders a case of beer, for the ride home.
Oh.
We didn't hit Toledo, Ohio, and the 24 beers were gone. So Andre, looks at me and says, hey, boss, I need more beer. And it's like 2 a.m, and it's like, Andre, there's nothing open. Boss, I need more beer. It's like, what am I gonna do? I can't. And all of a sudden, I'm in the left-hand lane, and this Stroh's truck is coming alongside of us on the right-hand side. He sees that. And he opens up the car door, and he's like waving to the Stroh's driver to pull over. And I could just see this Stroh's driver look like, oh, crap. It's like.
Did everybody know who he was at that time? Everyone would be like, that's Andre the Giant.
Yeah, I mean, he was a mega star.
Yeah.
It's like there wasn't anybody else, that big and, that unique at the time. And, he was a great talent and such a nice guy.
Well, he was in Princess Bride, right?
He was in Princess Bride.
I love that movie.
But I really felt sorry for him because when we'd stay on the road, there was no bed. No bed that would fit him.
Did he have a special bed at home?
I'm sure he did, but I was
Just
never
push a
at
couple
home with him.
together.
Well, what he would do, he'd take the box or the mattress off the box spring, and he'd put them, lengthwise, and that's the way he slept.
So I saw a picture with you and Andy Kaufman.
Yeah.
What was your experience meeting Andy Kaufman?
Memphis, Tennessee, and I think that was 1977 or 78. They were, working a different program with him and Jimmy Hart. So almost like the wrestler and the manager going at it. Jimmy Hart managed him and stuff, and, things went wrong, and now they're starting a whole nother feud thing. And I went on TV there and, talked about the whole thing. But, meeting Andy, back in the dressing rooms and stuff, he was, quiet in a way, very bizarre, the things he said and the way he said them. And his wife was with him, and she was a piece of work. And,
his performance
I met him a couple times, and it's like, he was really nice, but
not a wrestler.
His brain was just in a whole nother world.
Wow.
What about the bloody pen?
Yeah, tell us about the bloody pen.
What's up with
Are we
that?
getting a shot of this?
Looks like a doobie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You wouldn't want to smoke this, I'll tell you that. No, back in
Oh yeah.
back in the day, the Sheik especially was known for his famous number 2 pencils and stabbing guys and and drawing blood and things like that. And there'd be times, when you're managing him that the referee, you didn't want the referee to see it. You didn't want to get disqualified. So, the Sheik would be pounding this guy, and this guy'd be bleeding like hell, and the fans are going nuts. And he'd back up to the ropes, and he'd put it behind his back, and I'd grab it, and I'd put it in my coat or my pants or whatever. and the fans are going nuts. And it's like, the referee, they're telling the referee, they got something. And it's like, we don't have nothing. It's like, what are you talking about? And then, the referee would go check on the guy, and then I'd hand it back to the sheik. He'd go back and boom, 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 and, more blood. And then usually what would happen to, reverse the thing and get the fans, on the good guy's side, the good guy's making a big comeback. He hits the sheik, it throws it up in the air, it lands, the referee sees it, the guy retrieves it. Now he's stabbing the sheik with it, and the fans are going nuts. The sheik is bleeding, and a lot of times it would drop, and I'd grab it before fans could get it, and I'd put it in my pants pocket and stuff like that. So over the years, like a few years ago, I donated a few of my outfits to the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. And before I did, I went through pockets and stuff like that to make sure, maybe I got some money in here, which that didn't happen. But I found, some taped up number 2 pencils, that were used in some of the Sheik's matches. So I, dug them out, and it's like, especially this one, it's got, blood on it. And you don't
know whose DNA that is.
It's Sheik's or somebody, one of his opponents. So I'm going to keep him. So one of these days that if ever they can do these cryogenics or whatever they call that process.
Oh, bring him back.
Yeah, take the blood, and I can bring the Sheik back one day. It's what wrestling needs.
Did anybody get lead poisoning?
I don't know about that one, but they did. They could have had. Red Cross could have been there every night on a weekly basis, and filled up the blood banks with no problem.
Wow.
I feel like on that movie, The Wrestler, they were using staples.
Yeah, well, in modern days, that's what these idiots are doing. They're using staple guns on each other and fluorescent tubes, and they're jumping off of top of arenas, and it's
so you don't approve of wrestling as it is today?
No, I don't. Yeah. Like I said before, back in our day, you had these characters and people believed. Now it's so homogenized. Everybody looks the same. Everybody's doing the same moves. It just doesn't thrill me. I mean, it's still, people go and see it. It's entertaining. They love it. God bless them.
Yeah, they're shaving their bodies now.
Do you like the Hulk?
Personally, no. Yeah, I met him a number of times, and he's not my favorite person.
He's a big guy.
Yeah, he's
well,
a big guy.
who's around today that you approve of?
There's a lot of guys.
What about the girls?
Yeah, a lot of girls. I managed a girl once, and it wasn't a pretty sight either. It's like I, got involved at the end, and this other girl, threw me over the top rope, and I did this over the top rope thing, and I got my head stuck between 2 ropes, and I'm dangling there, and then, I'm selling it, I know what I'm doing, and then she comes and she starts pulling my hair. I had hair back then. She's pulling my hair, and the ropes are tightening every time she did it, and I was really choking bad.
Oh, yeah.
So those kind of things happen.
Wow. Can we see any footage of this anywhere? Is it like YouTube?
There's YouTube things out there, and there's some stuff from George Cannon's Superstars of Wrestling out there.
What about this book you brought today?
Oh, well, and over the years, it's like, after I got out, I do so many things. I've, done books, and I've contributed to other wrestlers' books, with all my photographs from when I was a photographer at Big Time Wrestling, and even documentaries. I helped out, big time on a documentary on the Sheik. There's another documentary that just played in theaters across the country called 350 Days, which is really tells the life story and, what wrestlers went through, because the 350 days meant that's how many days you were on the road every year.
I feel people look different. They're hairier. They seem older.
Yeah.
How old are these guys in this picture when this picture was taken?
The Sheik was probably 50 then, maybe.
Oh my gosh!
Tex McKenzie, he was probably in his 50s, late 40s, 50s. But still, these guys still had appeal. People, they were entertainers. Johnny Valentine, one of the greatest. Here, hold that.
Yeah? Which one is he? Oh, the blonde.
Yeah. That guy, I mean, the Sheik really isn't hurting him, but you look at these pictures and his eyes are bugging out, and and it's
They're acting.
Yeah, it's selling in the ring.
Yeah.
And that's how people believed, and they felt sorry for him.
I love it.
Okay. Well, thanks again, Supermouth Dave Drason. We got to go now. It's
What?
another
I
episode
know, I
of
told you
Chatty
it goes
Patty.
No, wait a minute. You told me
talk,
we've got
talk.
it all the time I wanted here.
I forgot.
Where's the producers around here?
Hello, hello, hello. It's the Chatty Patty Talk Show. Hello, hello, hello. It's the Chatty Patty Talk
We
Show.
will talk about the things that mean so much to you, like going to a restaurant or hanging at the zoo, clothes and sports and funny news, crafts and travel too.